It's time to get your gear on. New gear on Guitar Radio Show. GuitarRadioshow.com.
Guitar tones that you hear are coming from our next guest, his creation. The guitar is called the Nomad. It's by Riley Guitars. And we have with us here today on Guitar Radio Show, Mr. Garrett Riley. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Mark.
Yeah, man. It's great to have you on. Like I was saying when we were off mic, you know, you're all hail the Instagram algorithm. It turned me on to your guitars, and I was just like, wow. The first thing I saw was the Nomad. Mm-hmm. And I just saw a picture. There was nothing else, no sounds, just a picture. And I was just blown away by the beauty of it all. And the take on a classic design, but these really kind of this new way to view that classic design, and it's just beautiful. I mean, it's like art, you know. And I always say guitars are playable art to me. You know, I mean, sure. You can see everything behind me, right? I mean, to me, they're all art pieces to me. That's why, and I'm like a Strataholic too. So it's like, you know, sure. They're all different to me, and I really understand what Leo said about, you know, when he was designing the Strat, he was saying, you know, that I want it to look like that woman on the pinup calendar, the curves of that woman, you know, exactly, and you know, and like classic cars too, you know what I mean? Like that was one of the first things that I started to feel like that, like American Muscle when I saw the Nomad. Yeah. I thought to myself,
thank you.
You know what I mean? I was like, wow, there's a Hemi. There's like a Dodge Charger. or you know, a Chevette or Chevelle. You know, I was like, wow, man. So yeah, it just really captured my imagination, and I immediately said, well, what the hell did these sound like? So I immediately went to your Instagram page, and I hit follow, and I started to dig in and listen to stuff, and then I heard the sounds that we just heard on the way in, and please tell us who that was playing the Nomad.
That was playing the Nomad was actually Mike Adams of Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar fame, or Pusheen on Instagram. I know he has a pretty big following there, and he's actually a good friend of mine. And you know, I like to equate myself as the kind of you know, musical equivalent of a gym teacher. You know, I can play, but I don't personally like playing on video or anything like that. So he was kind enough to do some demo videos for me.
Yeah, well, he did some really great stuff, and I want to talk about the other ones that he did. And folks, go to Riley Guitars. Just type in Riley Guitars on YouTube, and you can hear these. There's only a few. There's like 5 or 6, I think.
Yeah.
But I assume there's more coming.
Yeah, I don't have them for all my models currently, but yeah, they're definitely on the way.
Yeah. So I'm always interested in what is the impetus for somebody to want to do what you do. You were probably a guitar player first.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I started playing at a fairly early age. I was probably 9 or 10 when I got my first Strat, and was playing in bands, kind of punk bands, post-hardcore bands in high school and stuff. And it kind of two things set me off. One was always wanting to switch pickups out, changing my strings, cutting nuts, things like that. And then the other was I kept kind of being the worst guitar player in the band. So there was definitely a point where it kind of shifted from, I want you to play guitar in my band to, hey, can you fix my guitar? My pick head broke or something like that. So I kind of started that off. And just knowing, I also grew up kind of a car head and big car guy. And so working with my hands and mechanical stuff and fixing things was always pretty much on the forefront. So my early 20s, after working in some warehouses and things like that, where it was kind of dead end jobs, trying to figure out what I wanted to do for a career, I decided to go to Roberto Venn School of Luthery down in Phoenix. And that was a great experience. Anybody trying to get into guitar repairs, that would be the number one suggestion. Yeah. They're the only accredited school in the country, so you can get student loans and assistance to go there.
Right.
It shouldn't necessarily be out of reach for anybody. And that's kind of what set me down the path.
Yeah,
definitely.
Well, you really to go and apply to Roberto Venn, you really got in a serious headspace to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Roberto Venn is an absolutely wonderful experience, wonderful school, but just the same as that, you have to want it.
Yeah.
And you have to apply yourself there. Out of a typical class, of 25 to 30 students, I went over a decade ago now, but I could probably count on one hand the people who are still doing it out of my class. So it is really easy to fall back out of it too.
Yeah. Well, I think anything like that, it's it's sort of like the savannah. Some of the gazelles are going to make it, and some of them ain't.
Sure, exactly, and coming out of there, you think, okay, I'm a guitar builder now, and you start at a shop and you start at the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah.
I from there went to Rain Song Guitars, building graphite carbon fiber guitars here in Washington. And pretty quickly that wasn't really what I was looking for, kind of a warehouse assembly line type of thing, manufacturing. So I got the call from Mike Lowell's Guitar Works and Custom Guitars, Mike Lowell Custom Guitars, and started there part-time sweeping the floors. And then kind of worked my way into a repair position, and then eventually building there. And that still took a really long time and a lot of hard work. It doesn't end after school.
Right. I mean, if we were to look at it, when did you graduate from Roberta Venn?
2014.
Okay, so here we are, 2025. Well, that's not bad. For you to get that's
11
pretty
years.
That's pretty good, actually. You get a lot of people who leave other kinds of vocational schools. They, particularly like culinary arts. Somebody like that's going to leave there, and they could be, a sous chef for quite a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
Eating dirt.
Yeah, and that's Yeah, it's pretty similar to a lot of other trades where you gotta still want it and be hungry and keep trying to get better and better every day. Even at this point, with my own repair shop and custom guitar line, it's like I have to remind myself every day that I don't know everything.
Right. Well, and I think that's what keeps the flame going, the desire strong. Sure. Is that I don't know this, but there's an opportunity tomorrow. It's like sort of like Albert King said, if I can learn a new lick every day, the day is a success.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I dig that mentality. I feel the same way. It's always about something new. Like, what am I going to learn today? What can I learn today? And whether it be here at this podcast, my other business, guitar playing, recording, whatever it is. What's going to be the takeaway today? you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the beauty of guitar, right? Is you're never done.
It's the onion you peel forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But in that time, you really got a lot of bench time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because I'm looking at the website and all of the places that you worked and how you finally got yourself to a point where you're like, okay, I'm going to strike out on my own. You know, folks, his guitars are marked like 112, 118, and right.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, it is. Yeah, so I'm at serial number 150 right now.
Hey,
so it is. Yeah, it's slow going.
Hey, but, you know what though? That's what really drew me in. You know what I mean? And that's the type of people that look, I've had the EVP from Fender on the show. I've had Paul Reed Smith on the show. Paul likes to yell at me, and and I've had the people from Killer Bee and all these other different guitar companies. And to me, it's kind of all the same. It's all about what the general ledger looks like.
Sure.
Okay, what's the output? What's the input? What's the, all of that. But you're all doing the same thing.
Yeah,
essentially.
Absolutely.
I imagine you're not working with CNC machines, though. Or are you?
Not personally.
Okay. I didn't.
So I do a little bit of both.
Cool. Let's hear it.
I certainly do hand building,
right?
Quite a bit, and then once I finalize prototypes and things like that, I do have a CNC mill that can reproduce my parts within about 10,000ths of an inch.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I don't have the skills to do that personally, but it does help. If I'm putting 110 hours into hand build a guitar, I only want to do that 2 or 3 times. So that I can actually be able to sell them at a reasonable price.
Absolutely.
That's a really point of pride for me, and something that I want to kind of keep in and striving is keeping my guitars within the reach of real musicians.
Yeah.
And once you get into that kind of $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 range, people can't reasonably buy that, and you find your guitars kind of become more hang on the wall pieces to collectors than the things that you're going to see playing out in the local clubs.
Right, and that's ultimately what you want to have happen, is have people out there playing them, hearing them, and going, oh, I want one of those.
Yeah,
exactly. That's what it's all about. When I saw the Nomad and then I heard the Nomad, I was like, oh, I really want a Nomad. You know what I mean? I was like, wow, this is like amazing. And but that's real. I know, and I'm only talking about that particular model, but there's plenty of models.
Yep, that's great.
You know what I mean? But when you were thinking about your designs, and it's interesting, I really kind of delved into the website, and I noticed that your part sourcing is interesting in the sense that like hardware and stuff like that, and of course pickups.
Sure.
But it's interesting that where you're sourcing from, who you're sourcing from, really, really good, top-notch stuff. So it's not like somebody's going to get a, I don't know, a no-name tuner on there. You know what I mean? And matter of fact, I want to see if I can do this. I want to take you we're going to go to the website, folks. So you go to RileyGuitars.com. I don't know if you can see that on your screen.
I'm not.
You just see me, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So real quick, I want to talk about, we've got the Nomad. We've got the Heritage, which kind of blew me away.
Correct.
And I really want to hear more about that.
Thank you.
The Super 58, super cool. The S Style, you can imagine what that might be. The T Plus, you can imagine what that might be. The 36, so it's 6.
30-inch scale, 6-string.
Yeah, which is outrageous. Sounds so good. The Bandit, and which is an offset bass, which sounds really cool.
That's the 30-inch scale 4-string.
Yeah, I'm totally into medium scale and small scale basses. I love them. And the club bass. The Cub bass, which is sexy as hell. If sex had 4 strings, that would be it. And I noticed that you don't like on the Nomad you're using Lawler pickups.
Yeah.
Right.
So I started out using Lawlers on that. I've actually switched to mostly. So I separate them between stock builds that are for the showroom here at the shop
Right.
and just for general sale for somebody who wants to buy something today. And then custom builds.
Okay.
So on all my stock guitars, I'm actually using Razor pickups, and those are hand wound in Japan. They're really, really well made, wax potted, and they're distributed through All Parts, who I use for a lot of materials and stuff. So those are really easy to get for me and sound phenomenal. As far as pickups, like kind of the echelon of something that comes standard in a guitar, Seymour Duncan, and then kind of up here you have your Lawlers and Fralins and stuff. They're kind of somewhere right in the middle. I would say they sound better than most Seymour Duncans I've ever heard, but still are not some of your most high-end boutique pickups that you can get. So
when you're saying your stock guitars, so what's the other echelon?
So there is stock guitars. That's stuff that I just kind of want to build. I had an idea this morning, and I'm building it and putting it in the showroom because I do like to keep, 6 to 10 guitars at all times hanging here in my shop, so that when people come in, they can play them and kind of help figure out what they want, what I like to build, and that style, and that kind of gets you going on a custom order. And those are all for sale at all times too. So if you buy a stock guitar, it's always something that's been played a little bit, but is still a new instrument. And then the other echelon would be a custom order. So from there, you can do anything basically within the body styles and scale lengths that I build. You can change your pickup configurations, what finish you want. If you don't happen to love Hipshot hardware and want a Godot bridge on there, that's totally fine. Nut widths, back profile on your neck, fret wire size, kind of sky's the limit to get the guitar of your dreams.
Right on.
As opposed to the guitar of my dreams.
So it's really more of a custom made instrument to your spec.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's cool. That's very cool. So I imagine the price difference, it'll be custom tailored. The price will be custom tailored to whatever your desires are.
Exactly.
So somebody can go crazy.
Yes. Yeah. The most expensive instrument that I've built at this point ended up being about $40 to $50 for the customer, and that was with $750 of pickup upgrades for Curtis Novak. That was actually a Cub bass with 3 Curtis Novak humbuckers in it, and a 5-way switch, and block inlays and binding and metal flake paint job.
Wow, that's
about the moon.
Yeah, that's not crazy
as far as everything goes. So yeah, like I said, I do still try to keep it within reason.
Right. That's not crazy. Wow, cool. So as you can probably tell, I'm a left-handed guitar player. What's the upcharge on lefties?
So all lefties are custom order, 4 to 6 months, but there's no upcharge.
Oh, great. Well, that's nice.
Yeah. No, I'm actually left-handed and was forced to play right-handed.
Well, I should have.
Which is a blessing for me. But
and maybe a curse. And maybe a curse.
Exactly. A little bit of both. And so no, I try to be equitable on, if you need a left-handed guitar, that's totally fine. I just don't generally build them for stock because they'll sit around for a year,
Makes sense. That totally makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what would try to explain to me and the listeners, and especially somebody who out there who's repairing guitars right now, like we had Carlos Lopez from Castadosa Guitars on right after he left the Fender Custom Shop.
Sure.
Okay, so now he was in a situation where he was smoking hot and super popular at the Fender Custom Shop. He was up and coming. He started there once again, another guy who started, on the floor in assembly, and then moved his way up and up and up, and finally, and then was a staff builder, and then eventually became a master builder.
Mm-hmm.
And he did not have to leave that gig.
Right.
He would have been okay.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the other guys there. But he said, I'm gonna get out there and I'm gonna do this. So he started a company with his wife called Castadosa. Beautiful guitars. And he's super talented. And I remember saying to him, so what was it like for you as far as that leap of faith to say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
now I'm going to do this on my own, live without a net. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Sure.
No parachute. I'm jumping out of the plane, no parachute.
Mm-hmm.
So, here you are, you're working at all these really great places and
Mm-hmm.
probably doing some amazing work, bringing guitars back to life and giving other guitars new lives and stuff like that. What was that like for you?
Well, in a way, I kind of fell into my own shop. So after after Mike Lowell passed in 2020,
Right.
Guitar Works was through a bit of a transition period and stuff, and that was right when Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar asked if I wanted to come and work for them and run the repair shop. And that was a really good opportunity for me because I wanted some management experience in that sense. And also, they offered to have me put my guitars on the sales floor, my custom guitars. So that definitely helped with a little bit of, exposure and get to know people in the area. Michael's Guitar Works was definitely more of, I was a repair tech and I did repairs in the back 5 days a week, 40 hours and really, put my 10,000 hours in there and work my way up. And then go into kind of being more of a front of house customer facing role at Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar really helped me in the sense of, trying to, know how to run a repair shop for one, and then two, gauging what customers really want out of their guitars, the prices that they're willing to pay and want to see out of other guitars, vintage guitars, things like that. And then finally, I live in Everett, Washington. It's about 25 miles north of Seattle. And I was commuting to downtown Seattle every day. And that was taking about, 2 to 2.5 hours a day of commuting. And so after my daughter was born, that became less and less desirable.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when we made the choice for me to open my shop actually out of my house. I have a home shop, converted garage, and started doing repairs out of my house part-time while taking care of my daughter full-time.
Right.
And then after about 6 months of that, it became pretty apparent that that wasn't going to be feasible because I was just too busy. And daughter sleeping less and less, infant becomes a toddler and they're running around. And so after about 6 months of looking, the perfect building came up and really just jumped on that. And that's what really kind of made that bigger leap and a little more legitimized, full-fledged guitar repair shop and custom shop. So in a way, the leap kind of happened to me rather than me making it.
So the universe provided, essentially.
Exactly. And, it's funny because just in this industry, it's kind of like an auto mechanic or something where you own your tools and you, the overhead of having a guitar repair shop is relatively low compared to other businesses. I'm a one-man shop, so I don't have payroll. I have a building rent, insurance, and power, and that's really about it other than, funding builds. And right now, I would say repairs are still 80% of my day-to-day business.
Yeah.
Last year I did 23 guitars, and this year I'm shooting for about 40, but that's still, a relatively small amount.
Right. Right.
So
here's the question. All right. Hypothetically, this episode's going to go out to 51 countries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hypothetically speaking, say all of a sudden you start getting a lot of orders.
Sure.
What are you going to do?
Well, so I do have an apprentice that comes in a couple times a week and helps out. And,
Good.
I can, if, if I cleared out of all my stock guitars because people are ready to buy today and that, then I would be, in a bit of a pickle. But I always have stuff coming down the line.
It's not a bad pickle. I mean, it's a pickle, but it's not a bad pickle.
Right. Yeah, I don't want my shop to just have empty walls. Everybody comes in and goes, "Oh, did you get robbed?" No. So, part of my order process and everything, that 4 to 6 months build time is including machining time and everything. So, if it came in that all of a sudden I had a plethora of orders, they would all still be handled within that 4 to 6 month range.
That's pretty good.
Just kind of in that sense of, my mill house can produce as much as I want to send them. It would just be an extra large order.
Right. So yeah, we had the bass luthier Scott Serene on. Are you familiar with Serene basses?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
We had him on, and my good buddy here on the show, Rob Wingler, he's having one made now, and it's about 6 to 10 months, I think it is, for his build. And it's a custom build, so I get that it's longer. And and Scott really doesn't do any stock guitars like what you're talking about. He not really anyway. I mean, there are a couple of things on his website, but I think everything that he makes ends up going out the door.
Sure.
So there's no stock per se for him.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that could potentially happen for you.
I would love that. Bring it on.
Wouldn't be a bad thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've said this to Scott. I've said this to Carlos and all the other people. Kevin over at Killer Bee. What's the long-term goal here?
Well, I
is there
do
one?
really like,
if there isn't one, that's okay too. I mean,
there absolutely is. After working at Mike Lowell's Custom Guitars for so long and working with Mike, just kind of side by side with him, he's someone who I consider a huge mentor, and a goal in that sense. Unfortunately, he passed away a little earlier than he would have liked and all of us would have liked. But the sense that, having a functional repair shop with 3 or 4 full-time luthiers on staff that could stay busy, and then being able to do, 200 to 300 instruments a year would be absolutely top of the max for me. One of the things that he said, over the years that really stuck with me is, they were getting a lot of offers from, overseas factories to do budget lines of his instruments.
Right.
And he just said, no, I don't want to build more. I don't want more instruments out there. I want to keep building because I love it, not because I need to sell 1,000 instruments a year.
Right.
And I think I really live in that same wheelhouse.
Yeah.
If you follow, I mean, I'm at serial number 150, and I don't think I've built the same guitar twice.
Yeah, they all have their own.
I love.
They all have their own thing. They're all mojo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I really love being able to put that personal touch on there and having every single guitar, if I was building too many guitars that the quality started dipping, I would just cut back.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Because that's not the goal.
Yeah.
The goal is to have them in musicians' hands.
I agree with you. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. How a lot of guitar makers will go to that route of, oh yeah, let's see if we can have a Chinese company go ahead and, mass produce it. We were scratching our heads after the NAMM show this year with Tyler Guitars now doing a Chinese version of their models. And I was like, okay, that's kind of strange. We don't know what the price point is yet, so that should be interesting to see. But, I don't know if there's a market for that. But,
sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to disparage anybody whose route that is, but it's just not not necessarily the way I want to go. And even looking at other, like Paul Reed Smith has obviously done an amazing job
Oh yeah.
of still making incredibly high quality instruments, and even their SE models and stuff. I was a Plec operator for a really long time, and I was always so surprised at how well the SEs are made. Their fretwork is almost just as good as the American guitars.
I would agree. Yeah, I
You
would
know,
agree.
so
I have
I think there's a way to do it.
yeah, I have three SEs sitting right here, and they are just
Yeah.
phenomenal. I honestly, and I know that this angers Paul when I tell him. I go sometimes. I said sometimes I think the SEs rival some of the core models coming off the line.
Right.
And
Sure.
and he did not like that. He goes, "That's just absurd, that's ridiculous." But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's cool. I like that your intention is so pure and that it's all about the musician. Because ultimately, yeah, it is. I mean, sometimes that gets lost in the conversation. So often,
Sure. Yeah.
we're so hyper transfixed on the actual gear in front of us. You know what I mean? That sometimes we forget about that they make music too.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, there's obviously all the rabbit holes you can go down between guitars, pedals, amps, and everything else, and
Yeah,
that's part of what fuels all of us.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, I still love just going out and buying random pedals, and even as a guitar, but I still buy guitars too.
yeah,
And people
yeah,
go, "Why would you buy that? You can just make it." It's like
yeah,
it's not the same.
yeah.
Like I know what my guitars feel like.
Right,
You know,
right. So
I want to
have you gotten to a point now where you don't play anybody else's guitars, you just play your guitars?
somewhat.
Yeah,
In a sense,
yeah.
yeah. I've just in moving the shop and everything and all that expense, I ended up selling most of my personal collection. That
Interesting.
was, Fenders and Gibsons, and I'm a real big fan of the Fuji Gen guitars.
Mm-hmm.
So the FGN brand itself has not really come to America a lot, but for $600-800, you can get a guitar that rivals pretty much anything.
Mm-hmm.
And they're so well built. So when I was working at Mike's Guitar Bar, a Japanese guitar importer, whenever they came through, I'd kind of go, oh, okay, I guess I'll buy that one too,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of snatched a lot of them up, and so I ended up offloading all that. So I would say at home, I only have my guitars, and if I ever need them, then I just grab a stock one off the wall and go play and put it back when I'm done.
Right on. That's beautiful.
And so
Yeah.
that's really nice. But I do love playing, other builders' guitars, seeing everybody else's level,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, there's, I I build from a repair standpoint. I do repairs 10 hours a day right
Right.
now, pretty much. And so, every guitar I build comes from that lens. And there are other builders out there who do so much better woodworking than I do, or so much better inlay or finish, or exotic woods and things like that. That I'm always so interested to see, because there's just different. It's like different styles of artists.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
But
so
I imagine coming from a repair lens, like you said, it it probably gives you the opportunity to design in a way that, okay, I had to repair that because of this design flaw or design characteristic,
yes,
and I'm going to try and design now to avoid that flaw.
absolutely. That's basically 100% of my build mantra is, build something simple that works really well.
See, and I've never heard that from any builder I've ever spoken to. And I've spoken to, like I said, John Page.
Sure.
John Page, he really started the Fender Custom Shop.
Hmm.
All these, they did not come from that standpoint. They did not look at it that way, or never revealed it to me.
Sure.
That's really interesting. I think but that should be in your marketing.
Yeah, probably. I wish I could be better at marketing and sales. That's really not my thing. And sometimes I know that's a hindrance. Um, People come in to play stock guitars, and I just straight up, it's like, well, I'm not a salesman. So here you go.
Yeah.
You just play it
Well,
and let me
yeah.
know if you want it. And
Yeah.
that's,
Let it speak for itself.
um,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, as far as building goes, like something, I don't want to do the most insane pickup switching or the most sounds out of a Strat that you could ever get, because I've been down that road, where you do humbuckers with phase and series split parallel and coil tap and all that. And you go, okay, well, I still have 3 usable sounds, and it's just 1, 3, and 5.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I find that most people don't use a lot of that stuff.
Right.
Even if you spend all the time and money to put it in. And so, I really just tried to build from the standpoint of what's the best bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Are the electronics fully shielded?
Mm-hmm.
Does it have a bone nut? Is the fingerboard edge rolled over and the fret ends cut well, and the fretwork, is really and then from there just CTS pots and switchcraft jack and all the standard, what's the best materials that this can be built out of.
Yeah, I think it's great that you started that whole thing with whether or not it's going to feel good first.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's
so important. I mean, and that's what I meant about some of like the PRS cores that I've picked up in my life, where I was like, well, this doesn't have it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And then I would pick up an SC and be like, this kind of has it. This has it.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
I had an instructor at Roberto Venn, and I still remember it, almost a decade ago, because it was kind of mind blowing to me, because, when you go to Guitar Center and you pick up 4 Strats and they're all the same color and they're all the same wood and they're all just US standard Strats, and the one speaks to you and it has the mojo and it's the one you're going to go home with.
Yep.
It's because all the little things were done right. It's not because it's some special tree that was cut down to make this one. They're all the same.
Right.
They all came off the same line. It's just because it's all set up right. It's all done, all done in the right way.
Yeah. Probably built on a Monday or Tuesday.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No Luigi Fridays. And
like with cars.
And yeah, exactly. and so that's that's something that I try to make sure is that every single one feels right.
Yeah.
Fret ends and fingerboard edge are some of the most important aspects of the entire guitar.
Yeah.
And a lot of people overlook that, and there's amazing woodworkers and luthiers who just don't necessarily think about that when they're assembling their guitar. It's okay, now the guitar's done and look at this beautiful piece of art. And I don't take anything away from that because it is beautiful, but it shouldn't need a refret straight off the bat, or fret ends cut, or a fret dress, or anything like that. So, those are the things that I try to make sure that when somebody gets their guitar and opens the box and plays it, goes, everything feels right. It might need a truss rod adjustment if it ships around the world, but I don't need to take it to my guy to be revamped now. I don't need to rip the pickups out,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great. I love that. It's such an honest approach. It's so it's player centric. It's consumer centric. That's great. I love that.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to lose when you're doing it that way, right? Like,
yeah, integrity.
I know I won't go out for being a sleazeball. Like, right. That's what I care about.
Right. Integrity is everything. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the models.
Sure.
Okay. So we got the Nomad.
Uh-huh.
What was the impetus for the Nomad?
In middle school, I had a friend with a Guild S100.
Mm-hmm.
And I drooled over that guitar.
Yeah, cool guitar.
For hours and hours and days. And every time I hung out with him, I just wanted to play it. And so, and I love Juniors are also my favorite guitars.
Mm-hmm.
Again, kind of with that simple,
Yep.
you pick up a real nice 60s Junior that's just been dragged around on the ground and beat up and played to high heaven, and something about it where it's just such a light guitar and the long neck tenon, and it just feels right and resonates with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to recreate something like that.
Yeah, and they're just slinky too. They're so slinky, and that wrap. So many people hate the wrap around tailpiece, but I love it. I think it's great.
So Yeah, again, from the repair standpoint on the Nomad is, they all come with a locking tailpiece studs that keeps the tailpiece from angling up. And that's what really ruins the action on a lot of old wraparound guitars.
Right.
And then obviously, I end up setting the pitch and setting the necks and everything on those. So they are, made to last in that sense. So they all get locking studs, and then they all have Faber compensated wraparound tailpieces.
Nice.
So those actually intonate correctly. They have what's called brass tone bars built into them, so they resonate a little brighter, a little louder in that sense. And then, it's hard to go wrong with a volume, tone, and an output. What I love about that guitar is it really forces you to learn how to use your volume and tone to shape the sound.
Yes.
Because so many guitars, you'll just switch to a neck pickup, and this one, you just really, you dial the tone down a little bit, and it gets fat, and it just really breaks up well. And they're, they end up being incredibly light for that reason too.
Yeah, but like Leslie West, you think of Leslie West and how he played, and it was all about, I was talking to Jimmy Vivino about it, and he says he just mastered how to use the volume and the tone control in such a way that he could get a myriad of sounds and tones out of the instrument.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so that's what I really love about building those guitars, and what the kind of vibe is all about. And I mostly do those ones in Relic because it just feels right. No reason other than that.
Yeah, I mean, what would you call that pick guard? It's not tortoise. It looks like a cheetah.
So that particular one that you're looking at, that actually is a 1-ply celluloid acetate guard. So that is the real old school tortoise.
Wow, that's cool.
So those actually start as a raw sheet, and they're hand cut, sanded, buffed, and polished for each guitar on there. And those are a ton of fun to work with because that stuff is super, super rare and hard to get these days.
And pretty brittle, right?
It can be.
Yeah.
It does start moving over time. They'll kind of get their own shape to them.
Yeah.
But you can't find sheets large enough to do say, you couldn't do a Jazzmaster style guard out one or anything. That sheets that big just don't exist. But basically, they call it Mother of Ray-Ban because it's the same material that
that's wonderful
sunglasses are made out of.
Yeah.
So that's good stuff.
So beautiful. So beautiful. All right, moving on. So I was listening to the video of the Heritage today, and it shocked me when I was reading the specs on it, and that it was a bolt-on. I would have never, in my wildest imagination, have thought that it was a bolt-on. And I want to talk about your method of bolting on, but the guitar is just so deep and beautiful, and it's not an incredibly wide body. It's not a deep bowl body or anything like that. It's certainly not a J45 type of body.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But it's but the sound is just astounding. Folks, go to the Riley Guitars YouTube channel. You can see it there. But tell me a little bit about this.
Yeah, so those guitars are still going to be the most hand-built out of any of my instruments for each one. So those, again, everything's going to circle back to repairs. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I kept repairing Taylor T5 guitars.
Right.
And the electronics go bad on those quite a bit, but they're so cool. They're so fun to play. Every time I'd repair one, I'd sit there for 5 or 10, 15 minutes and just noodle around on it and love going, I just want to sit on a couch and play this thing.
Yeah.
And but I never thought they sounded right. They don't really project well. They kind of sound like a cardboard box in that sense. So I really wanted to do something that kind of took that thin line acoustic concept, but made it actually sound like an acoustic guitar. So the bodies on these are a mahogany bowl, 2¼ inch, that basically I route out by hand. There's no center block in them or anything like that. They're just a mahogany back and a spruce or cedar top. The top gets braced, and there's bridge plate on there. But other than that, it's acoustic guitar construction. Chose to go with F holes instead of a sound hole on this because if you're playing in a live setting, that cuts out any feedback
Right.
that you might get out of a mic or anything. You don't have the sound going straight into a mic. You know, and kind of with the same Taylor concept, you know, acoustic bolt-ons are really having a revolution right now.
Yeah.
Pretty much, you know, Martins, Taylors, pretty much any acoustic you can get in a bolt-on style, and you notice that doesn't necessarily detract from the sound all that much. But you know, what I didn't want to do was build a guitar that, you know, in 5 years needed a neck reset, and now you have to put $500-600 into it to get it, you know, get it back to the right pitch.
Right.
So with the bolt-on, you know, if you ever need any adjustments, you can make them. And that's the main idea there.
Yeah, makes sense.
But other than that, you know, it's a handmade bridge glued onto the top, bone bridge pins, bone saddle. So really, you know, you're doing everything you can to make this guitar still sound like a full-fledged acoustic guitar in just a really small 2¼ inch package.
Right. And
so,
it does.
And so and then electronics wise, you know, the K&K Pure Mini is my favorite acoustic pickup. It's what I recommend to all my customers who want to install a pickup in just about any acoustic guitar, because I've never ever seen one break in installing them for over 10 years. They don't have a battery, so there's nothing to change. You don't need to be in there fiddling around for any reason. And they sound so incredibly true to the instrument.
Yeah.
And I find, you know, when I put them in a J45, it still sounds like a J45 through an amp. And when you put them in a D18, it still has that Barton characteristics.
Right.
And so I really wanted something that's just going to translate, you know, the woodiness of the guitar through the amp. And I always find, you know, you can add a volume onto those. I've done that in the F hole, a little way for volume, but I find that, you know, pretty much anybody who's playing in a live situation uses a volume pedal anyways.
Yeah.
So just being so hands off about it, you know, people who come pick it up and play it go, oh, does this even have a pickup in it? Because there's just no visual cues. And I think that's really cool about that one.
Yeah, that's neat. I noticed that on all your bolt-ons, you don't use a plate. You do inset, like, grommets.
Yeah, I do recessed ferrules. Yeah.
And how does that change? Does that change the tone any? I imagine it might.
So you know, in my opinion, I don't have the best ear known to man, and I don't like to get too far into the kind of, you know, pinky up tinfoil hat guitar tone talk too much. But I do think that there is a correlation between having, you know, 4 screws going directly between the neck and those ferrules, each individually.
Right.
If you have a plate, I think it can cancel out a little bit of the tone running through it.
Right.
Because they're all coming back onto each other. The other benefit of that is a lot of times on plates, if you over tighten them, if you don't have the little plastic plate underneath the rubber plate that they've been putting on guitars now, you'll cut into the finish.
Yeah.
They'll buckle and everything like that. And these just get rid of that, the chance of that ever happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes the back smoother. You know, if you're trying to build a guitar with a certain aesthetic, you know, you can put black ferrules in there if you do a black guitar, things like that, where you can kind of, you know, help the look of the guitar as well. So
yeah, that's cool. It's very interesting. I'm fascinated. All right, moving on. The Super 58.
Yeah. So that one is very much a Jazzmaster style guitar, but I don't call it a JM style because I do change. So, one of the big things I like to do on all my guitars is a flatter radius. I do think guitars should look vintage and play modern. So, I do a 12-inch radius for most of my builds. So that really helps. You can't really bend on a circle. So if you're playing like an old school 7.25-inch radius, you either have to have the action higher or choke out past about the 15th fret.
Right.
And there's kind of no two ways around that a lot of the time. And so, I want people to be able to play with a really nice, low, comfortable action, still be able to do full step bends without ever having to think about, any fret buzz or choking out or anything like that. So that's one of the main facets of those guitars that I like to employ. And then the other thing is I'm just not a fan of Jazzmaster trims. I know a lot of people like them, but they're really hard to set up.
Yes.
They're really hard to keep in tune.
Yeah, you got to get lucky with a Jazzmaster trim. I'm lucky. I have one Jazzmaster. I've had two Jazzmasters, and I just literally sold one because I just could not get on with the trim. I've got one that I'll never let go, and I'm like, this is a dream. It's
right. And so, and then the only way to solve that is really a mastery. Yeah. And even then you can still struggle with it. And so it's expensive. And so, I don't want my guitars to just go astronomically high in price for that reason. And the other thing is, I really, really, really adore the hip shot contour trim.
Yeah, it's great because it's got a lot of meat on it.
It's got a lot of meat. Yeah. They stay in tune.
Yeah.
I really like that they employ the roller on the one anchor and the pins on the other, because what I also find out of, American Strats and things like that, the more you play them, the more you develop that wear spot, the little click.
Yep.
And when you use the trim and come back, you have to kind of give it a little tap to get it to go back in tune.
Or drag it up.
Exactly. And that never happens on the hip shot trims.
Yeah. That's cool.
So
and I love the look of the hip shot tuners too. They've really got a unique vintagey Art Deco kind of vibe to them too. I dig that.
Yeah. They do. And the open gear, they're high ratio, 18-to-1 tuner. So they're extremely accurate, but the ultralight also really helps, going back to like the Nomad. A lot of SG styles are famous for headstock dive. Right. And, a lot of that is back in the day, they were throwing Grover tuners on them.
That's right.
That's Grover tuners are incredibly heavy compared to the hip shot open gear tuners. So, anything to keep a guitar from being too heavy. As we get older, we start to realize like maybe playing a 10-pound Les Paul isn't great for us. And so, I really try to make stuff that's not gonna cause people back problems. You need all the help you can get.
I can dig it. All right, let's go to the S style.
Okay, so that, it's called S style because it is an S style.
Exactly.
Leo got it right.
He did.
I don't need to change a lot about a Strat to make it a Strat. Basically just a standard Strat style with my build tenements included. So, bone nut, full electronic shielding. I don't build a guitar without shielding or without bone nuts or without good hardware. So that's just, my best pitch on one of those is that you're getting the US built instrument that you would go and buy for about the same price from Guitar Center or, from Fender ultimately, and bring into my shop and spend, $600-700 in shielding, new tuners, bone nut, fret dress, all that stuff that kind of adds up onto the cost of that instrument where, when you're buying one of mine, it's all already done.
Was the bone nut a real big part of conversation at Roberta Venn?
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you can always hear it, obviously, on open strings.
Yeah.
But what you get out of a bone nut is also that when you're playing a lot of the, plastic or Corian or micarta or nylon nuts, what you get is, your strings are basic. They're abrasive. They're like a tiny saw. And so every time you tune the guitar, every time you bend a note, every time anything like that, you're just sawing through it.
Literally sawing through it. Yeah.
And what I've found over the years is you go and you lift a string off of a nut slide and you can see the grooves in there from the strings. They make impressions. And, the biggest benefit of a bone nut for me is tuning stability.
Yeah.
Even more than sound is, you get a harder material in there and you're not making basically sink spots in the nut for it to catch and sit and want to hold into. The harder the material you can get, the better it's going to hold tune. And I get a lot of repair customers who come in and go, my guitar won't stay in tune. I need new tuners. And, tuners work on a worm gear principle. The gear can turn the worm, but the worm can't turn the gear.
Right.
So you could grab onto a guitar string and pull it as hard as you can. And I guarantee that you will not be able to get that tuner to start turning backwards. It's pretty much always going to be the nut.
Yep.
So that's really a big.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by. I'm always fascinated, and I was talking to Rob about this the other day. I'm always fascinated by the folks who are complaining about their G string on their Les Pauls and their SGs and all those, three on a side guitars. And I've never really had that problem. And I think, I don't know, it's just one, the way I set up my guitars. Two, the way I before I put the strings on, I stretch them out. I mean, I spend a lot of extra time stretching the guitar, stretching the strings out, tuning it up, playing it, stretching it out again. I might spend, to set up a guitar, or I should say to restring a guitar for me takes me 15 minutes.
Sure.
That's it. And then I might take another 15, 20 minutes just stretching it and tuning it, stretching it and tuning it, bending it, tuning it, and then I'm good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then all I have to worry about is temperature changes in the room, taking the guitar sharp or whatever, And it's weird, when I was living in New York, all my guitars would go flat. Now I live in Austin and been here for almost 15 years. All my guitars go sharp.
Right.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
Is it arid?
I mean,
is it because it's more arid?
Yes. Or? I mean, so the way I like to equate it is, Austin, I love Austin, and it's humid.
Yeah.
And it's hot. And so what you get when it's humid out is guitar necks suck up the moisture and swell in back bow. And so that's going to make you go sharp. And if you're in New York and it's dry and cold, they shrink and get a forward bow. And that's when they go flat because the string length goes down.
Totally makes sense.
And so that's, in situations like that, I do try to tell people, if your action is wandering up and down, it's your truss rod. You don't necessarily want to start fiddling with the action at your bridge until you just, knowing where your truss rod should be set and then having that mental image of, if I do a tap test on the string, this is how much clearance is there.
Absolutely.
If you can kind of remember that, you can always get your truss rod back to right at that same spot. And you'll notice that you're always staying at the same action and the same setup.
Right.
And that's kind of part of that.
Sure. That makes total sense.
I tell all my customers, no matter what guitar you buy, I set up brand new custom shop fenders and Les Pauls and stuff. It's always worth whatever your local shop charges, $100, 120, whatever. Go get a setup. Or just have them check it out. I tell customers estimates are always free. If you buy a guitar from Guitar Center, just bring it in and I'll take a look and tell you, no, go grab the next Strat off the wall. This one's got a rise in the fingerboard or something.
Right.
Or
not all the frets are placed in.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's go on to the T Plus.
Yeah.
This is a different take on this.
It is a little different take. So one of an artist endorser who reached out and wanted to play my guitars. Kellen Quinn from Sleeping with Sirens and Haunted Mouths reached out and decided that he wanted to do a custom build in a really kind of Johnny Greenwood style. So like the old Tele Plus of the early 90s with lace sensors, swamp ash body, and a humbucker in the bridge. And so what we did with these was kind of replicate that, but without the weight.
Okay.
Those were famously kind of boat anchors.
Yeah.
They were at the bottom. They were part of the tree that was in the swamp back then.
Yeah.
And so we do a lightweight chambered swamp ash body on those. 12-inch fingerboard radius, 110/57, really large frets, and then humbucker, single coil, setup, the lace red and blue with the inner both and outer coils switching on the jack plate there, and then everything else on that is fairly standard nitro finish.
Yeah.
That exact guitar that's on the website there, that is Kellen's, and that's actually gone through some changes even since that was built. So that's actually refinished in black now, and got some different pickup options in there that he's been experimenting with for his new group and everything, and so that one's still kind of working up. Wouldn't call it the Kellen Quinn signature model or anything for those reasons, but it is definitely something that's always changing a little bit. But really just
beautiful.
What my take would be on a Tele.
Right. Fuel injected.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. All right, the 36. Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah. So the broken record time again is I loved repairing bass sixes.
Yeah.
Because they're so much fun.
They are fun.
But with that ultra tight radius on them and the really floppy, Jaguar style bridge and things like that, I love playing these, but they're so hard to get right.
They really are.
And they take a lot of setup work to play right, but when they do, they are so cool.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do something like that, but with a standard Tune-o-matic style bridge. And the nice thing about the 36 is I do the Tune-o-matic and the stop tailpiece. So they come stock with a Duesenberg less trem on there, so you can still get a lot of that tremolo sound, and they are really Bigsby or Jazzmaster like, where they're not the most sensitive trems on the market, and so you can get that nice almost country-ish lull to them, where it's whoa, rather than a Floyd Rose dive bomb or something.
Right.
And then flattening out that radius and making the nut a hair wider and just kind of building that out to a spec where it's really playable makes a huge difference to me. And then I just wanted to do something different with the body, so went with that almost non-reverse style,
right?
But bisected it, but made it offset. Yeah, exactly. It's offset. It's a little larger, and so the 36 actually comes out being about as large as a full-scale bass.
Right.
It's a very large instrument.
Yeah.
But with that, it really makes it ultra playable, where you can go through and you can play guitar licks on a bass 6 in a way that you can't really do that on the Fenders or the Squires, where if you want to play a chord, you can, or if you want to do a solo, you can. It's really something that I just want to be able to have be more versatile and usable. And then I can't say enough how well the Fishman Fluence pickups complement that in those. Having the classic humbuckers in there with the different voicings and everything, even with your amp just on clean, you can go from really a really bass heavy, gainy crunch to something that's really trebly and smooth without even changing your amp. Yeah. The switching options really help a lot.
Yeah. And that belly cut is beautiful. I mean, it's so...
Oh, thank you.
It's so flawless. It's just like It's like water. It's gorgeous. Really great. I bet it feels
Yeah, thank you
great.
very much.
Yeah, folks, go to RileyGuitars.com. There's a video under that when you're in models. So good. So good. All right,
Yeah,
let's
that's
get...
another one. Mike Adams just blew it out of the water.
Oh,
He really,
just
really knows how
phenomenal.
to make all the instruments sing and really express themselves
Yeah.
in a beautiful way.
Next up is the Bandit, which is a short scale.
Yeah. Yeah, so that one's my
Sort of
newest
like
model.
Sort of like a jazz master kind of a thing, but not. Another great belly cut. Does this come in a rosewood neck too, or just the maple?
So that one that you're looking there was actually a prototype. So this is a new model. So there have been 2 built, and there are 2 on the way.
Nice.
And that one, so those 2 are maple necks while I was still working out the kinks and getting everything ready. And then the next 2 will be rosewood necks.
Nice.
So those ones are on the way right now, doing one of those with the same Lawler Thunderbird pickups. In the short scale style, I still want this to be something that really sounds like a full scale bass. I find that like the old Mustang basses and Bronco basses,
Yes.
with the single coils in there and stuff, you can kind of they definitely feel like a short scale and a little bit more like a toy in that sense, and can't quite keep up with a band sometimes. And so what I want to do with the Lawler Thunderbird pickups is make sure that this is still an instrument that you can go out and play play out.
Right.
So with those, they just sound enormous.
What's it weighing in at?
That one was about 7 pounds, 7.5 pounds.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. Pretty light on that one.
Yeah.
These next 2 are going to be probably more in the 8 range. They're a little heavier. Always try to get lighter woods, but sometimes you kind of end up with a build with what you get. And then on one of these next ones, I'm also delving into doing the Bartolini Thunderbirds with an NTMB preamp. And seeing what this can really do as an active bass as well.
I got to tell Rob about that. He's a Bartolini and he's a Bartolini endorser. So
okay, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, using those, and I am working on a Cub 5 that'll have
5
Bartolinis as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So now we're moving on to the Cub.
Sure.
Which is just super cool. What a badass looking bass.
Thank you, yeah.
Especially that blue one with the tort guard.
Oh, sure.
God, look at that thing. It's gorgeous. So give us a rundown here.
So that is what would be considered like a 54 style P bass.
Yeah.
So contour body rather than the old slab body. In the past, I built those a lot with the the Fralin split P pickup. So humbucking pickup, but just really in that sense of something that's simple and works well.
Right.
I built a lot of basses with Mike Lowell and working over there. So I really got a lot of lessons from him on how to build a well-balanced, sturdy instrument that's going to last really long and go through the typical rigor of being a playing or touring musician.
Right.
And so this is something that really kind of embodies that. Really simple, but you really can't beat hip shot hardware on a bass.
Yep.
Especially. So, doing those with the hip shot A or B bridges, and again, just electronic shielding. I'll drive that home every day of the week is something that is just so important for anybody playing in a live situation.
Yeah.
And you kind of don't know until you have one that has a really good shielding job how bad some of the stuff you can get, off the wall at music stores is. So kind of be in that. And then, 9.5 inch radius, a little more of a vintage fret on that, 6105s. And then, just a really standard instrument from there on. Just try to make it light.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And there's a video on that page of Mike playing it as
Yes.
well, playing that, and it's
Yeah.
got such character.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of goes back with the same like the Nomad, where it's like, you really got to dial it,
Yeah,
and you have the opportunity to, change the volume and the tone to get that rather than kind of
right,
switching to a different pickup or anything like that.
right.
Um, but they also sound great just on 10.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, folks, go to RileyGuitars.com. Just phenomenal, beautiful stuff. I just took them through the gallery real quick
Uh-huh.
on there as well. So, folks, you'll be able to see all the guitars that we were talking about, obviously on RileyGuitars.com, but also
Uh-huh.
on our YouTube channel. I just was scrolling through the website, and as we talked, I showed you the specs and everything else, and so you'll be able to see all that stuff if you want to see it there. Those of you who are just listening through podcast apps and stuff like that, so you can always go to the Guitar Radio Show YouTube channel. You can go to the Riley Guitars YouTube channel. You can go to RileyGuitars.com. I highly recommend you do, just for the. What eye candy. Holy cow.
Thank you very much. I spray all my finishes myself, and I really take a lot of pride in that.
Yeah.
I know, there are some amazing finish artists out there, much better than I am, that produce much, stunning and flatter and better buffed out or things like that. But I love experimenting with new finishes.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't think I've made the same guitar twice, in that sense, and don't particularly plan to either. So I really love it when people come to me with custom orders that they go, hear me out. This is going to be a wacky one. Those are what get me the most excited.
Right. Right. Well, that one, as a matter of fact, I got to look at it again. Hang on real quick. There was one Nomad I think I saw. Was it sort of a green or no?
Yeah, so there's one. That one is actually out getting some demo work done right now, but they'll be back in stock here in another month or so.
What do you call that green?
That is sage green metallic. So it's very pale.
Yeah.
Almost like sage sums it up just about perfectly.
Yeah.
But it is a really, really kind of vintage inspired color.
Yeah.
And then on top of that is some. So it started out as an even lighter green, and then some amber tinted nitro on top of that. That kind of gives it that, I don't want to say boogery, but almost like a a little more into the green,
right,
than just a plain sage.
You never know that just call it booger green.
Exactly.
Booger green flake. It might go.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. I always wonder.
Or just call it sugar booger. I mean, you could do that,
Yeah.
Something like that. Or booger sugar. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's. I love that one. That one was the one that I think that's the first picture I saw, and I was just like, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah.
So, yeah. Super cool. Well, Garrett, I can't thank you enough for doing this today. Is there anything else you want to share with us about your guitars and the company?
Oh, not really. I think we've gone over a lot of it, but it's just I really encourage people just to reach out.
Mm-hmm.
I try to stay really active on Instagram and other social media stuff. My website doesn't get updated as much as I should, admittedly, but you'll always see all new guitars that are coming out on my Reverb and as well as on Instagram. I don't want to say, I kind of fly by the seat of my pants sometimes. And so, all the models listed on my website and everything, the specs are always changing. I've said, I try not to build the same thing too many times because that's just not how I like to operate. And so, when people come through and just give a call or something, we can really always come up with really good ideas of what you might want and what, your dream build is going to be within the scope of what I'm doing as well.
Yeah.
Because that's the main thing is all the custom builds are always really collaborative.
Very cool.
You can throw out all the specs you want in the world and I can go, well, I can do this, this, and this, but wouldn't it be cool to do X, Y, or whatever, or, you want to do certain bridges or things like that. And I can tell you the pros and cons of that,
Right.
when you reach out, rather than just kind of wondering if that's something I'll do or not. I'm always happy to talk to people. So
Right. Well, great.
that's, yes.
So they can reach out to you from the email on the website. They can reach out to you
Email,
through
website, phone,
Instagram.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, thanks, man, for doing this. This is great. I think people are going to really want to sink their teeth into this and check it out.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Well, we're going to sign off right here, but you hold on one second, okay?
Okay.
Check out Guitar Radio Show on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher Radio, guitarradioshow.com, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Find Guitar Radio Show on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And remember, if you like the artists you hear on Guitar Radio Show, don't just stream their music, buy it.